Well, let's discuss these developments now with our very own Barry Bateman, ENC reporter who joins us from his home in Pretoria. And of course, we also have Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana, who is a University of Johannesburg professor, and he is going to give us some analysis. Gentlemen, thank you very much to the both of you. Let's start with you, Barry Bateman. Prof, you can have your coffee. It is called the Coffee Chat. Barry, beginning with you. You have been following the story of Malusi Gigaba and his wife. The Hawks make this arrest. Let me cut straight to the chase. Why would the Hawks get involved in what appears to be a domestic dispute, which is what some have actually been saying on Twitter?
Yeah, that was the big question last week. Good morning, Xoli. It did seem odd. Was this another case of the Hawks, interfering or getting themselves involved in a matter which was clearly not within their scope of investigation? And naturally, the public was concerned about this. But what we've since learned is that the Hawks had already in their possession a docket which they had been investigating for several weeks related to a conspiracy to commit murder. And the subject of that investigation was Norma Gigaba. It then happened that we had this incident involving the vandalism of this G-Wagon, this Mercedes-Benz belonging to a man by the name of Peterson Siyaya. And the case is opened up at the Brooklyn Police Station. It was then the Hawks that, already having a docket opened, picked up on this particular matter, thinking it might actually be involved. We understand now that, or the Hawks actually saying they're going to be handing over the malicious damage to property assault docket to SAPS detectives later today after Norma appears in court. But this now explains why the Hawks were involved on this particular matter. They're not going to be continually involved in it, but we do know that there is another case that they will continue investigating.
Barry, all right, you pause there for a moment. Prof, let's bring you in. This morning, as Barry says, the Hawks are going to hand over this case to the police after Ms. Gigaba's appearance in court. Is that a tacit admission, Prof, that this is actually nothing more than a domestic dispute? And how does that look to the Hawks? Because publicly, they're not saying that Norma Gigaba is involved in any murder plot. It is sources that are saying this to journalists.
I mean, this doesn't augur well for the Hawks. They are supposed to be looking at serious crimes, not at a domestic dispute situation. They should have never been involved in this case to start with. So it's quite surprising that they would concern themselves with husbands and wives that are fighting when there are more serious matters that they should be attending to. Well, I guess they have some explanation to do, Xoli.
Prof, surely that can't look good, particularly on the Ramaphosa administration. People are itching to see people who have been accused of serious crimes being taken before the courts. I watched over the weekend the head of the Hawks. He simply could not answer any question or name anyone that is going to either be taken to court anytime soon, or why there has been delays in actually dragging anyone to court.
Well, it is a little bit disturbing that you would have this incident happening almost, well, more than a year, 2 years maybe, that you had a new head of the Hawks. Initially, of course, there were challenges, but after a while, we got the sense that things were settling and the new head was, in charge, steering the institution towards doing what it's meant to do. But to have this case now being investigated by the Hawks, a domestic dispute, tells you that it doesn't look like everyone is united behind a common goal. I mean, this case should never have gotten to their desk to start with. They should never have been involved if they were clear on what their mandate is and were committed towards that mandate. So there may be certain individuals who don't seem to have gotten the memo that that is not our mandate and are simply doing their own thing. It is quite worrying, especially when you thought things were kind of settling down.
Barry, let's bring you back into the picture. Another massive story that I think carries itself over from 2 weeks ago is that involving the spokesperson of the President, Kusela Digo, and her husband, and it's around these tenders allegedly awarded to the company. The latest, of course, is that the Sunday Independent now is saying that 80 million rand has actually been paid over to the Royal Baza projects, and the couple is taking the newspaper to court for malicious damage to their name, they say. The Independent, the person who wrote the story, Pete Rampedi, is saying, we stand by our story. How do you see things panning out?
Well, I think we should be encouraged by the fact that the Dicos are going to be taking the Independent to court on this matter, because that'll give them an opportunity to put all the information out in an affidavit and a public a platform. And Rampedi and the Independent will do exactly the same. If he's standing by his sources, and it does appear that he does have documentary proof to be able to back up what he has been reporting on, they're going to be having a difficult time. I think this is saber-rattling. We've seen it before when there are difficult stories that certain individuals have to answer to. The first thing they'll threaten is, well, we're going to take you to court to sue us for damaging our good names. But in this particular instance, given what has been revealed by Rampedi related to documentary evidence, I think they might have a difficult time. So good for them. Let's go to the court and let's settle it there.
Barry, it goes without saying that surely this will be damaging for Kusela Digo and possibly scupper her chances of going back to the office of the president, if indeed it is proven that 80 million rand has been paid over. Because, yes, the focus might be on her husband, but both of them now have decided that they are going to comment publicly and defend this issue publicly, both of them.
You're quite right. They've agreed that they will, put forward a united front as the Dico couple, the Dico household. I think it must be noted as well. I think at one point there was one of the comments that no money had been paid over at a particular point. I think that's that there was a contract in place, but no money had been paid. The latest revelations being that cash had in fact been moved. So that then creates questions over their initial version. Who's being misled here? So it is certainly very damaging. And considering it goes all the way up to the president's office, where we look to for the highest ethical standards, and we wouldn't want any of this kind of indiscretion for anybody in that office. So certainly a difficult position that this family is in.
Prof, that brings us back to what has been going on over the past weekend. Since Friday, the ANC-NEC has been meeting, and reports at the weekend suggesting that the ANC, reminiscent of the Zuma years, is again split right down the middle in as far as how to deal decisively with corruption. What does the public say now about not just the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa, but perhaps his strength within the ANC, the political home, if you like?
Well, this is a continuation of a stalemate that was inaugurated at Nasrec in 2017. Because the ANC went into that conference already with a lot of problems, one of them being corruption. And they managed to strike up a half measure by electing Cyril Ramaphosa and yet retaining the entire infrastructure and disposition towards corruption. Because once you had DD Mabuza supporting Cyril Ramaphosa, you should have known right there that this was unlikely to be an entirely clean government. Because DT Mabuza has, Caesar Samayand, City Press journalist, has written a wonderful book called Eerie Assignment, where he catalogues in a very detailed manner all sorts of incidents, allegations of corruption, theft that Mabuza is allegedly involved in. So we are now seeing a continuation of that stalemate. Nothing has changed, which then continues to raise the question over the sincerity of this president to change things. And there's one important matter here that I need to make, is that it's not enough that President Ramaphosa continues to manage the situation. South Africa is at a point where it does not need a manager. It needs a leader, and a transformative leader at that. Because what is now coming out is that these COVID funds have pretty much been distributed to ANC people. So it's an ANC Coffe, it's an ANC budget. And we've always known that they have used government money as their own coffer, right? And they are doing the same thing here.
Prof, finally, as I let you go, the Deputy President, the office of the Deputy President, perhaps I should say, forced to issue a statement at the weekend to say the Deputy President is well, he's at home. Yes, we appreciate the inquiries, but he's fine, and stop with the malicious rumours. What do we know about the status of this man, particularly the state of health?
Well, Titi Mabuza has never really been a serious figure. He has always been a part of all sorts of jokes. And he's also been sickly. He has disappeared. I mean, at the height of this COVID crisis, he had disappeared, and also because he has been ill. So, you know, people kind of expected that perhaps he was too ill, and if you are too ill, the possibility is that you might pass away. So I think that the suspicion arises out of that. Because of his illness, he might, perhaps it is possible that he passed away. And also because he's never been a serious figure. I mean, he's a fairly ridiculous figure. So it's always easy for people to have all sorts of jokes around him. And that goes into the integrity of this presidency. That you would have a deputy president who's, deputy to the president. Should something happen to the president, he steps in as the real deal. So it doesn't overwhelm that you would have someone like that being made a joke when he's actually the next person in charge.
And you're not doing a good job either, Prof, of being kind to him this morning. Barry Bateman, finally, as I wrap up with you, do you know anything about the state of health of the Deputy President?
No, that's outside of my scope of context, Xoli. But I think given this age that we're sitting in, the lockdown and what we're dealing with globally, I think that you might find your answer somewhere there related to why he's out of commission at this stage.
All right. Gentlemen, my thanks to both of you. Barry Bateman, our reporter here at ENCA, joining us from his home in Pretoria, and of course, Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana, joining us from his home in Johannesburg. Thank you indeed for waking up with us.